Did you know your yarn stash is all wrong? At least according to some, you have too much yarn, you have the wrong kind of yarn, you have yarn that's too cheap, you have yarn that's too expensive. Whatever you do, don't show the size of your yarn stash because that would encourage other people to buy too much yarn, the wrong kind of yarn, too expensive yarn, too cheap yarn. And to all this, sometimes I just want to say, keep your eyes on your own yarn stash. Now look, criticizing people for having too much yarn or not the right kind of yarn is not necessarily new in the fiberverse. However, I've been noticing in the last year or so that this kind of criticism is falling under a new umbrella of overconsumption. In a late stage capitalist world, overconsumption is definitely an issue. Buying as much as we can for as cheap as we can with no real concern for how long it might last or where it might end up when we're done with it has real world impact. But is our hand knitting and crochet and other yarny activities really contributing to this problem? Or are well-meaning people pointing their finger in the wrong direction? Let's talk about it. So hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, pick up some knitting, and let's talk about overconsumption in the hand knitting world. Welcome to This Knit With Me. If you are new here, I'm Carrie Craft Geek, and this is where I talk about making pretty things with pretty string. So first, let me share with you the project that I'm going to be working on. This is the Chibi Sweater by Nora Chan Knits. There's actually a child size pattern and an adult size pattern, but I'm making the child size pattern for my daughter. We picked this out together. There is one modification that I have done to the pattern. The original pattern has this motif at the bottom of the colorwork that kind of looks like an upside down heart. But my daughter, she really wanted hearts down below. So I replaced this motif with this heart pattern. Now, I will confess something about this project. I did not shop my stash. The original pattern calls for wool yarn, but my daughter's, she's kind of a rowdy girl. So I need a yarn that would kind of hold up to her rough and tumble play and the washing machine and would still be good for warmer weather because we live in a warm weather state. And also my daughter wanted these very specific colors. With all that in mind, I decided I wanted a cotton acrylic blend yarn because cotton is warm weather friendly, but the acrylic gives it a little bit of elasticity, making it a better substitute for wool yarn than 100% cotton. So I did not have any yarn in my stash that kind of met all the requirements that I wanted for this project. So I ended up buying yarn. I bought a little bit more of the blue yarn than I needed because I just liked it so much and there was a sale. So if I'm going to buy one ball of blue yarn, why don't I go ahead and buy 4 of them? Am I headed towards SABLE, stash accumulation beyond life expectancy? I don't think so. I'm going to be honest. I really don't think so. Look, in all sorts of areas in my life, I really don't like overconsumption. It leads to exploiting labor. It leads to huge environmental impact with tons and billions and billions and millions of tons of garbage filling up our landfills. And textile waste definitely contributes to the problem. But our home fiber artist, a major contributor. So I did a little bit of digging. I did some research and I want to share what I found out and what I kind of think about this topic around knitting and overconsumption. So here's my project. I'm going to start working on it and let's start talking about the possibility of overconsumption. I'll have sources for everything that I'm going to share today down in the description box below. So I do encourage you to take a look at all of that and not just take my word for it. Honestly, you should never take the word of any rando on the internet. So, if somebody's not giving you sources, be skeptical. If somebody's sources is just AI, be very skeptical. There's a lot of jokes, lots of jokes in online community. And one of the popular ones is about how, knitting is one craft, buying yarn is a whole other hobby. And it's true. It's hard to want to make things with pretty string and not fall in love with the pretty string itself. And there's certainly data to back up that knitters like to buy their yarn. According to Craft Yarn Council's 2014 market survey, 87% of crocheters and knitters are buying yarn every 1 to 3 months, and 11% of knitters and crocheters buy yarn once a week. And they're not just buying yarn, they are using it. A 2025 study found on average we are finishing about 84% of the projects that we started. But of course, buying yarn faster than we use it, that's how we end up with stash accumulation beyond life expectancy. And SABLE is where the criticism of overconsumption comes into play. After all, if you have so much yarn that you can't possibly use it at all in your lifetime, isn't that the very definition of overconsumption? Well, personally, I think it's a more nuanced conversation than that. You can certainly, on the internet, find extreme cases of SABLE where people have had to rent whole storage lockers to store their yarn because they have so much that they can't fit it in their own home. However, I think one or two extreme cases of that sort of what I would say is probably overconsumption at that point, I don't think necessarily describes the fiberverse at large. I mean, surely if knitters en masse are collecting that much yarn, then I think it would show up in some sort of data. Textile waste is a big problem in the world. 11 million tons of textile waste ends up in landfills in the United States each year. And that's just the United States. It is, in fact, a global problem. And you know what drives most of that textile waste? The fashion industry. 85% of textiles end up in the landfill each year, and fast fashion contributes 10% of that waste. But it's not just landfills. It's also the amount of carbon emissions. Experts believe that doubling the lifespan of garments could help reduce greenhouse gases by 44%. I think that fast fashion is the complete polar opposite of the type of heirloom handmade garments that we are creating in the knitting and crochet world. What we do is slow fashion. And these beautiful things that we make usually are very durable. There's a reason we often talk about them being heirlooms, that they get passed down to other generations and other people. And usually what we make, if not passed down, can easily be unraveled and used for another project. But let's look at the specific numbers around textile waste and yarn, because it is not just us hand knitters and crocheters or machine knitters, hobbyists. I don't love the word hobby, but whatever, we're going to use it here. Hobbyists who use yarn. The fashion industry uses so much yarn because you really are hard pressed to make most clothes without some of it. The yarn market was estimated at around $34.55 billion in 2021 and was projected to grow to approximately $57.8 billion by 2030. That's all the yarn that's produced, right? $34.55 billion worth of yarn is produced globally across all sectors. What about us hand knitters? What portion do we make up of that $34.55 billion? The global knitting retail market was estimated to be $6.21 billion in 2024. Now, it needs to be noted that the numbers for the total yarn market versus the numbers for the knitting retail market are not apples to apples, but this gives you a rough idea of what percentage us hand knitters make up of the global yarn market. It's not an insignificant amount, but feels like a drop in the bucket when you're talking about 34.55 million. And I did try to find any evidence of hand knitters, crocheters, etc., being a large contributor to textile waste in landfills, and I just couldn't find any data on it, which tells me that maybe we're just not the problem. But to be fair, right, even if our yarn stashes aren't significantly contributing to landfills and environmental impact, maybe it's just the over-consuming mindset that we take part of when we build up these sables that is a problem, and we need to check in ourselves. So let's discuss that. Just a quick reminder that if you have not already, the great free way to support me is to make sure that you hit subscribe, click the notification bell, and utilize a hype. Hype is YouTube's new system to help promote smaller creators and gain them more visibility. So if you have a hype, please spare me a hype. So I get why if you see somebody showing off a yarn haul or a really large yarn stash, you can't help but feel that it resembles the sort of hauls that you see from, beauty influencers or fashion influencers, where maybe the over-consuming mindset is more at play. But just because something might look like a horse and walk like a horse, maybe it's not a horse, maybe it's a zebra. People who are buying thousands of dollars of fast fashion to show off are consuming clothes that are more perishable, that they know aren't going to last long, maybe not even last through a whole fashion season, and then aren't going to be all that useful for donation. One of the big problems in fast fashion is even if you donate the clothes, a lot of those donated clothes are not worth trying to resell, and they still end up in landfills. But is that same thing happening with yarn? It was hard to find any statistics on this, but at least anecdotally, when you really watch a lot of, online knitting, crochet content, in addition to seeing hauls or stash tours, you're also seeing people use those stashes, whether they're shopping their stash for a project or they're destashing some of their yarn by donating it to charity or reselling it to other crafters for a deep, deep discount, or just giving it away to other people. It is like a $20 bill that is being circulated amongst people who need a $20 bill. That's not the same thing as buying a shirt that has holes within it within 3 months, donating it to a charity not being able to sell it, and so it still ends up in a landfill. And I don't think that we can assume that people who are buying large quantities of yarn for their own personal use means that their mindset is to overbuy everything in their life. Because let's consider the mindset behind stash accumulation beyond life expectancy. The mindset isn't just like buy, 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 buy. At least not for me. Maybe it is for people, and I'm just projecting myself onto them. But based again on what I see of online knitting content, the intention is to use it, not abuse it. And frankly, criticizing people for accumulating yarn that they want to use one day in their yarn craft, I don't know. It kind of sounds to me like criticizing a voracious reader for owning too many books. Now, do I think that knitters and crocheters would do well to shop their stashes, use what they have, not buy so much yarn on spec? Well, yeah, I mean, just from a budget standpoint, that is more efficient. However, I think that assuming that because people might buy a large sweater quantities worth of yarn without having a specific project in mind means that they're being wasteful either. There are nuances to this conversation. I know for me personally, there's times when there's a sale going on and I'm like, I really like that yarn or I really like that color and this is a really good deal. And I just want to make sure I get enough of it that whatever project I end up using it for, I don't run out, because no one wants to lose at yarn chicken. But that also means that I personally end up in low buy and no buy years where I'm not buying a lot of yarn because I am using up my stash. And I don't think I'm the exception. Maybe I am. Am I the exception of cycling through sort of high buy and low buy yarn years? Let me know. What is your experience? How do you manage your yarn stash? What are your tips and tricks for keeping it reasonable based on how you knit, crochet, weave, what have you? Share your tips and tricks down below. Now, do I think it's healthy as knitters and crocheters to make an effort to shop our stash, have no buy and low buy years? Absolutely, I do. I think it's important in all aspects of our life to use the things that we have and use them well. And I think that if you're not going to use it, pass it on to another knitter who will, so that that yarn doesn't go to waste. Leave no yarn behind is my mindset, frankly. But there's another aspect to this, which is, my goodness, in this world, let people enjoy something, especially when that passion is actually pretty innocuous in the bigger picture. It's good in this world that people have passions and hobbies and things that they care about. Not only is it good for your mental health, it's good for community building. So many people are able to make friends and build community through these crafts, and at the end of it, have a very useful item. But if we turn every joy and passion that we might have into a character flaw or moral failing, we end up pushing people away from the craft and the community and not welcome them into it. We should be encouraging people to want to join into a craft that encourages slow fashion, thoughtful production, and considers what we produce to be heirloom items meant to be enjoyed not just by ourselves, but future generations as well. If anything, that is the antithesis and the antidote to overconsumption. So here I am with my project. I mean, at this point, really, I am just in stockinette island as I knit the body until I get to the bottom ribbing. And at that point, I'll have some rounds of 2x2 ribbing, and then I will pick up, and I'm going to be on Sleeve Island because my daughter insists that she wants a long sleeved shirt. Pray for me. Kids close knit faster. Kids close knit faster. Kids close knit faster. Also, before I forget, links to this pattern and other things that you see in this space will be down in the description box as well. Some of these might be clearly marked affiliate links. So if you click on one of those links to do some shopping, I might earn a commission, and this really does help support my channel. So if you utilize one of those additional levels of support through an affiliate link or leaving me a tip through Buy Me a Coffee or YouTube Super Thanks, thank you so much. I am eternally grateful. Once again, thank you so much for joining me today. Right about now, a video suggestion is going to pop up. So if you want to keep watching videos of me, you can. Otherwise, I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you might be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy making. Bye.